One of the top questions I receive every single week is how can we put a value on a commercial investment property? Yeah, I know we can base it on cap rates, but where do those come from? I'm going to answer part of that question today by using the CoStar platform. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Real Estate's Next Level. I'm Lauren Keim with Lehigh University's Goodman Center for Real Estate, and today we're going to discuss how CoStar helps us to price commercial investment real estate. So how does CoStar help us to price commercial investment real estate? If you're a heavy CoStar user, then today's program will probably be a little too basic for you. And to use the features we're going to be talking about today, you're going to have to be a subscriber to CoStar. Oh, and by the way, if you do me a little favor, please subscribe to our channel and hit that little notification bell to let you know when we post a new video.
Now, again, you have to have a subscription to CoStar in order to actually use the software. I do suggest you get a subscription to the service. It is an expensive service, but they have analysts that actually go out and double check all the data, make sure it's accurate. They get a lot of information put together in this system. So the first page is always news and articles that are relevant today. You'll see across the top searches for lease, searches for sale, sales comps, which we're going to spend some time on today, lease comps to try and find leases. And by the way, we use lease comps pretty regularly simply to figure out if something that we're providing for, we're building, we're developing is in the right ballpark in a particular area in terms of price range. We can look up tenant information. We can do analytics, and analytics give us a lot of tools and a lot of reports we can put together, lease analysis and marketing center. What we're trying to figure out today is what a property is worth. And we're going to start with multifamily because multifamily tends to have a narrow range of cap rates in any particular area, in any particular type of property. So if we're looking as an example, today we'll look at a large multifamily project in Jersey City, New Jersey, one that might have a water view. We want something that's over 100 units. We have to figure out the value probably two major ways. One of them is based on the cap rate. Let's say we already know what the gross income is, we know what the operating expenses are, and we can calculate a net operating income. If we have that NOI, we can use that to try and figure out the range of values for the sales price of the property by dividing that NOI by the typical cap rate for that type of property, a newer property over 100 units in that particular area. But we also want to look at a sales comparison approach. And you look at a sales comparison approach, one of the things we're going to try and find are properties with a similar tenant mix. And when I say tenant mix, a similar number of one bedrooms, two bedrooms, three bedrooms, and efficiencies, similar amenities, possibly a pool, possibly tennis courts, possibly a water view, and try and figure out what those have sold for on a price per unit basis. But it all starts with going to sales comps. So we pull up our sales comp search. And in this case, we've got nothing on the screen. So I'm going to start with Jersey City, New Jersey as an example. And it's going to show me a lot of properties because it's actually giving you a little arrow or whatever we call these, a diamond for every single property that's commercial in all of Jersey City, New Jersey. And as you can see on the right-hand side, that includes anything that's for sale, anything that's sold, anything that's not on the market, and a wide variety of properties from industrial to multifamily. And some of them are big, some of them are small, everything. Well, I want to limit this discussion just to multifamily. But that's not going far enough because even limiting it to multifamily still leaves a crazy number of properties. In this case, 1,972 records totaling 1,192 properties. And as you can see, there are many different kinds. Here's one that is medical center condo on the first floor. You've got older buildings, you've got newer buildings, you've got larger buildings and smaller buildings. So I'm going to add filters to this and try and limit what I'm looking for to something that actually fits my type of property. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a sale date range. I don't want comparables from 5 or 6 or 27 years ago. So I can put in a date range if I'd like, or I can go back 3 months or 6 months. I'm going to go back 2 years and see if that limits me to what I can look at. Now I've dropped down to 181 properties. I can put in a cap rate range. The problem with limiting it by cap range or sales price is the cap rate might not be disclosed. And I want to know what cap rate is for a particular property. So instead, what I'm going to do is put in number of units. I'm going to start at 100 units up to no max. And that limits me down to 6 or 7 properties, 8 properties is what comes up in that particular area of Hoboken, New Jersey. I hit done, and it's going to show me those properties. Again, I want something relatively new. Now, I could go through and try and limit this a little bit more, put in filters where we might change the age of the property. We might bring it up to uh, certain type of style, garden style, low rise, high rise, mid rise. We might look for dorms. We might not. We might look for something with elevators. There are many, many things that we can put in here to try and narrow our search. In this case, though, instead of doing that, I'd rather look at everything that's available. I can click on it here to take a look at it. Now I'm looking for waterfront properties, so I'm probably looking at these down here. This might even have a waterfront possibility or a water view possibility because it's close. So as I scroll down, I see that one building, as an example, sold for $509,600 per unit, 53 million, at a 5.47 cap rate. That one happens to be the one that seems to be close to an inlet. Then we've got one that does look like it's on the water. You can see the water back here. It's probably got some pretty nice water views from the towers. That went for more, $631,200 a unit. Makes sense. A little closer to the water, a little better view. It also looks like it's a newer building, although this one was built in 2020. This is built in 2003. 643 unit or 648 units, 4.4 cap. I've got a little bit of a range here. My third one, 699,000 a unit, actually doesn't appear to have a water view, but went for a very high price per unit. Built in 2017, again, a very new building, 4.6% cap rate. And I've got one more here that's interesting, built in 2010. And that is again on the water, but I'm going to have to look at it for more details to find out more about it. Incidentally, there is one other one here that's a little further back from the river, from the Hudson, and that went for 565,000 a unit at a 3.9 cap range. So we've got 3.9% cap rate up to about 5.25, and we can try and narrow that field and try and find out what makes one better than another to try and value these properties. And again, CoStar is giving us two things. They're giving us the price per unit and they're giving us a cap rate to work with. Now, we may decide that just limiting it to Jersey City might not be quite enough. We might want a broader range. Now, I could go with a radius search, but the radius search is going to pull out Midtown Manhattan. And prices are going to be significantly different in Midtown Manhattan than they will be in Jersey City. But perhaps Bayonne isn't too far off. Maybe North Bergen isn't too far off. East Rutherford, and so on. So instead, I might do a polygon, and that polygon might be, maybe I'll include Elizabeth, just as an example. Come across Bayonne, come up the river, and just pick a random area. Now, if I give it a minute, it should recalibrate and come up with additional properties that we can search. There we go. A few more of them came up. Now, these are not quite on the river right across from New York. Keep in mind, anything that is commutable to Manhattan is going to go for a much higher price per unit. So as we get a little further away, even though there are some nice buildings outside, now these are garden apartments selling for under 200,000 a unit, and again, under 200,000 a unit, but these are relatively similar to each other. You've got 191.6 a unit and 190,300 a unit. You've got garden apartments. Now we can figure out the value of those. Here's another garden style apartment, went for 184.5 a unit. Shows you how to easily price based on what is available. And again, back to the Jersey City properties that are much higher in price. Here's one in Clifton Park, which is a little north, doesn't have a price on it. Now, if I want to try and find out more information on any of these, let's pick out this particular one as an example. I can click on it. and it's going to give me a lot more information on this particular property. Shows me who the recorded seller is, who the recorded buyer is, some notes on the sale, some transaction details, what they paid for it. It shows the number of units and the breakdown: 51 studio, 374 one bedroom, 223 two bedroom, totaling 648 units. This is important if we're trying to compare the mix of apartments in different properties we're looking at. Also, the realtors had uploaded some nice 3D tours showing some of the amenities of the property. CoStar, of course, takes their own photos as well, and you cannot use those photos for any marketing and anything else. In this case, JLL happened to be both the buyer broker and the seller broker. Gives you a lot of information about the property. There's a summary on up front. You've got a property tab, which gives you a little bit more about the unit mix, what the asking rents were, what the typical asking rent was per square foot, the vacancy rates of the property. A lot of great detail. Leases. It does give you some sales comps in this particular case. And if you pull these sales comps, you can get some interesting comparisons that you might want to include in your report if you're trying to price a property. Analytics, some of the key metrics that you're looking at, including the submarket, sales price per unit, asking price, cap rate, the sales volume. There's a lot of interesting information here. We can talk about almost anything. Tenant information is not going to be very much in terms of multifamily. That's more important if we're looking at a retail property or an office property. Gives you the public record on the property. In this case, it's not available. Demographics on the area. What's the population within 2, 5, and 10 miles in 2020? What's the projected population in 2025? What's the annual growth rate? What's the median age? What is their typical education level? How many are in the armed forces? How much is the income? What's our growth? What's our population by race, by income, by housing? This gives us a lot of detail that we can use to build our package of information when we're trying to analyze this. Contacts on the property shows you who the true buyer was, who the true seller was, who the listing and buyer's agents were in this particular case. They were teams in both cases. And across the top, you'll see the sales date, September 26, 2019, sales price, price per unit, cap rate, how long it was on the market before it sold. A fairly significant period. 648 units, total of 627,000 square feet, gross building area, built in 2003 on less than 2 acres. It does have images. You'll see a lot of them there. And again, the images are not something you're allowed to use in anything other than CoStar or LoopNet because they are the same company. And then, of course, a map of the location, which puts it within view of the water, but not quite on the water. And still got a great price per unit. And if you remember, one of the comps was at almost $700,000 per unit. Might have been a little bit closer. We can use this cap rate if we estimate that our cap rate is similar to that based on a building we might be selling, let's say here. We can divide our net operating income by that 4.4% cap rate and come up with one value for the property. If we're trying to analyze a property, we can also use this price per unit. Now, again, this breaks it down so that we know what the number of efficiencies, one bedrooms and two bedrooms are. We may find that the property we're trying to match it up against is more two bedrooms and three bedrooms. So we may have to adjust that. But at a price per unit, if we have a 200 unit building, we can multiply this out and see how close that sales comp approach, that price per unit approach is to our income approach using the cap rate to try and value that same property. And again, CoStar is a great tool for helping you to analyze real estate and figure out what exactly it's worth. You can search almost any area, try and figure out what you're trying to price. Instead, I could have looked at, let's say, hospitality properties. And instead, I might be looking at number of rooms. So I might want hotels that are at least 100 rooms in this area. And I'm only finding 3 that come up. And here's a trade at 3.52 cap rate. Now, keep in mind, again, I still probably have a sale date within the last 2 years. So on a sales date in the last 2 years, we've got a $58,200 price per room, $207,000 price per room, and $166,000 price per room. But you're looking at very different hotels, something built in the 70s, something built in 2000, and something built in 1996. So while these are not too far apart in terms of price per unit or price per room, this is significantly lower, but you're looking at a smaller hotel in an older style than perhaps these are.
I really hope today's video was helpful for you. And again, if you liked the video, I'd appreciate it if you subscribe. Until next time, I'm Lauren Keim, and thank you for watching.